So I want to talk about substitute dominants, and the best way to do that is to actually just show it to you. So let's go ahead and there's an old tune, it's an old standard, and remember we started talking about secondary dominants, which was a dominant chord. If we're in C, it's a seventh chord that's a fifth away from the tonic chord, and then of course the 5 chord, the dominant chord in C is G, and G7 always goes to C, right? Not always, but you get for this discussion, okay? So a secondary dominant again was the 5 of a tonic chord. So if I go 5 notes above D, where D minor is the diatonic chord, and play a dominant chord, that's called the secondary dominant of D minor. B7 would be the secondary dominant of 3. Now there's something you got to realize with secondary dominants is that they can be preceded by a 2 chord usually. So you'll see this a lot where you have a D minor that goes to G and then it goes to C. So that's 2, 5, 1. Now this has a dual function, as they say. It's the 2 in the key, and it functions as the related 2 of the 5. Now, same with the E minor 7 to A7. If we have A7 going to D, we could probably put a 2 chord in front of it, and then go to A7, and then go to D minor 7. So there's a couple substitutions. If you just have a full bar of A7, you could go probably. Now, again, you have to use taste with this. It doesn't really work with diatonic poppy stuff, okay, which is, you want to keep it harmonically true to the style. You don't want to add complexity just to add complexity. If you think about great artists, like Caravaggio painted very just beautiful, realistic things. And he found the beauty in kind of very diatonic, but just, a master at it. I mean, a real master, obviously. But if you look at Kandinsky, he was like all over the place, So if you mix those two styles, somehow if he painted a part of a Caravaggio in the style of Kandinsky and vice versa, it wouldn't really look really nice, would it? It wouldn't fit. There'd be something wrong. So you kind of have to use judgment and taste when you're messing with these things. But anyway, in this tune, it was written in this style, and so it has secondary dominants that go to tonic chords, and they're preceded by the 2 of the secondary dominant. So that's one way you can use secondary dominants to go to dominant chord or diatonic chords. Now, when they talk about substitute dominants, the easy way to think of it is it's a dominant chord a half step above the target chord. So, for instance, if the sub 5/7 of 1 is G7, of G7 would be D flat 7. It's a dominant chord a half step away from the target, which is C. So G7, D7, C. You can see it has that pull. Why does it have the pull? Because it still contains the F and the B in the chord. It has the 4 and the 3rd scale tones that pull in the opposite directions. The 4th and the 7th go down to the 3rd and the root. Both of them are present in G7, and both of them are present in D flat 7, and you still get that pull, that same thing. The one thing, they call it a tritone substitution, I guess. But the one thing they don't tell you about, the other things that they actually altered in the chord to even make it kind of pull a little bit more, is they use what's called, and arrangers use it all the time, chromatic approach. They've added a D flat, which is they added a flat 5 to the G7, effectively, and they called that the root, and that gives that pull. You've all played chromatic approach. Anytime you go, right? That's chromatic approach from below. That's chromatic approach from above. That would be double chromatic approach from below. That would be double chromatic approach from above. So they've added chromatic approach notes to the chord. The other one is they put a flat 9 in it. They put an A flat in it, which is part of a D flat chord, right? And that A flat is a half step away from G, which is, of course, the 5th in C. So there's two other. You've added the chromatic approach and you've added the tritone, right? And all that. Okay, so the sub 5/7 of the 5 chord for this tune would be D flat 7 instead of G7. The sub 5/7 of the A7 would be E flat 7 instead of A7. Okay. Pardon me, the sub 5/7 of the B7 would be F7 to the E minor. So I'm sure you've heard that. Now, when you do these substitutions, again, you have to use taste. It's not going to fit like every tune, but it gives you a way, if you're hearing chords that you're not quite sure what they are, and they're not diatonic and they're not secondary dominants, you want to check if they're sub 5/7s. Now, this tune. Now, if I add sub 5/7 of 1, I have to alter the chord a little bit to get the melody note. There would make it like a sharp 11, D flat 7, sharp 11. So that's a common thing you'll see. They'll have altered chords in these secondary dominants to fit the melody. So there's a lot of ways to harmonize things, and we'll talk about that. But that's what sub 5/7 is, or sub 5/7 of a secondary dominant. And you can just remember, you can always add the 2 usually. Now in this tune they added a minor 7th flat 5, probably just to keep the character of C. And well, the melody is C, so it's F minor 7 flat. So it's something to experiment with. It's something to kind of listen for. It's a real nice thing, and but again, it has to be used, with good taste, and try to don't use it just to be complex. But experiment with it and see if you like it. See if you can find tunes with it. They're used a lot, by the way, in turnarounds. And also too, they alter them. They go, instead of a 7th, they may play a major 7th. You like keeping a common tone, things like that. But it always creates a nice chromatic line in the bass line usually, and it has the dominant approach in addition to the tritone that resolves to either the diatonic chord or to the 1 chord. So again, it's a simple thing to figure out. You just go half step in front of the chord you're aiming for. If you have 5/7 of D minor, instead of playing A7, play some variation of E flat 7. Could be E flat 7, E flat 9, E flat 7 flat 9, E flat 7 sharp 11, E flat 9, E flat 13 sharp 13. Anything. You got to just mess with them and see where it leads you. So that's sub 5/7 of 1 with, I guess actually we expanded it to it's related to too. Okay, thanks for listening. Okay, just want to add a little bit more clarity to some of the things I showed you there. Again, if we're in C, let me get my pen. If we're in C, the diatonic chords are C, right? C major 7, D minor 7. Let's put them a little bit apart. E minor 7. F major 7, right, G7, A minor 7, and B minor 7, flat 5. And I'm thinking 4-part harmony. You could have the secondary dominant in front of every one of those, right? Oh, darn it. So C major 7, let's say. Okay. So the secondary dominant in front of that, or the primary dominant in the case of this one, is G7. And this G7 goes to C. This one would be A7, right? That's the secondary dominant of that. This one would be B7. This one would be C7. G7 would be D7. Now this is, 5-7 of 5. 5-7 of 6 is E7, and this would be F sharp 7. So those are the secondary dominant chords of the tonic chords. Now what I was telling you about, let's just take this example here. This 5-1 relationship, whenever you have a 5 chord, especially in standards, okay, the C major 7, it generally goes to C, and they usually write an arrow like this. You can always have the related, what's called the related 2. And this would be D minor 7. They usually put a bracket like that when they're analyzing tunes. But it's a minor 7th chord, which is a 5th above the dominant chord. So G, A, B, C, D. G, in other words, just count up 5 notes or go down 4 notes, whatever. And you'll get a minor chord, which is it's related to. Same with E minor 7 to B7. If we have a B7, so we have B7. Oh, we didn't do A7 yet. I'm sorry. Oops, I was getting ahead of myself. Let me erase that. So if we have a secondary dominant of a A7, we have a tune that goes A7, and then it goes to D minor 7. Okay, this is 5-7 of 2, right? That's what that's called. 5-7. It's the dominant chord in front of 2. You could precede this with A7's 2 chord, which A, B, C, D, E, which is E minor. So E minor is the related 2 of 5-7 of 2. Now this also has a dual function. This functions as the 3 chord, also in C. Okay. They call that dual function now. I'm not sure if that does you any good to know that, but I guess so. The next one would be B7, right? And we'll just do 1 or 2. And that goes to E minor 7. So B7's related 2 is F sharp minor 7. And it's F sharp, and I'll just put a line for minor 7, flat 5. And that flat 5 is a C, so they altered that to kind of it kind of relates to the C scale a little bit better. And the tune was Moon River, in case you didn't figure it out yet. But this could be F sharp minor 7th, depending on how it is. Now, what happens with this is you can figure the rest of them out, I'm sure. But E minor 7, then this E minor 7, okay, goes. You have your E minor 7, then that goes to the secondary, to the substitute dominant of E flat 7, which is the substitute dominant for this here goes, remember it's a half step in front of this. So this is the sub 5-7 for A7. Maybe I should put that first. Let's do that first. Okay, so F sharp. Okay, so that's our related 2s. Okay, they usually put a bracket and then an arrow. And again, this is called the related 2, and this would be 5-7, 5-7 of 3. And then I'll just do this diatonically. Then if we go to D minor 7, and you may see an A7 in front of that, right? And this would be 5-7 of 2. And then this would go here, this would be 2. And then G7, this would be a related 2 of 5-7 of 1. and then the G7 goes to C, right? So you have all these secondary dominants and their related twos, okay, and the related two chords. Then the substitute dominants for all these are just a chord that's a half step in front of this. So what's a half step, a dominant chord, a half step in front of this? Well, this is D flat 7. This one would be E flat 7, right? This one would be F7. This one would be G flat 7. This one would be A flat 7. This one would be B flat 7. Well, that's a flat. This in here would be C7. It really, there's not much functionality to that. Usually, if it's altered, this will be a B minor 7, okay, a B minor 7, and then the substitute dominant would be a C7. But I wouldn't worry too much about this one. But these are the substitute dominants for the 5/7 of each one of the diatonic chords. So. And again, a nice pattern is with the secondary dominants. They usually they'll put a minor chord in front of them, and it just adds a little bit more color to it. F sharp minor 7, and you can experiment with that. Now it's rare that they do it. There's a couple tunes that have the related to, but you could put the related to of D flat 7 in front of that if you want to get a little bit more outside. So it would be A flat minor 7 to D flat 7 to C flat major 7. It happens in a tune. Satin Dollar uses that, actually, an old jazz standard. So you can do stuff like that. You can think, okay, well, what's the related to of E flat 7? Well, B flat minor 7. What's the related to of F7? C minor 7. So, but the farther and farther you get away from the diatonic harmony, the further outside, and probably changes the complexion of the tune just a little too much. So anyway, this is your diatonic chords. They are secondary dominants. These are all the substitute dominants for those chords, and then you can add the related to. So that's pretty much the whole gist of what we're trying to talk about, is learn what is a substitute dominant, sometimes called tritone substitution. It's enhanced with the tritone staying the same. You still get that 4 and 7 pulling to the 1 and the 3, but then it's also, when you add the substitute dominant, it added chromatic approach instead of scale approach. And that chromatic approach has a different texture than the scale approach. And you can hear that with the substitute dominant. So use it wisely, listen for it. It's a very interesting way. But again, man, this stuff is easy. Like, what could be easier than, well, the sub 5/7 of 3 in the key of C. Well, 3 is E minor. What's the sub 5/7 of 3 in E minor? Well, it's F7. It's just a dominant chord, a half step above your target chord. So, what's the related to? Well, C minor 7. It's all pretty easy stuff. So, okay, any questions? Post them below. I hope you find that interesting and helpful. And we'll do a modal interchange next. Thanks a lot.